Grand unified field theory. Quote, "There is another way. Whether it's wormholes or warping space, there's got to be a way to generate energy so that you can pull it out of the vacuum. And the fact that they're here shows us that they found a way." Jack Kasher, PhD, Professor Emeritus of Physics, University of Nebraska. It has been said that mathematics is the language of God, but until now, it seems that no one has been speaking God's language. The first half of this chapter is largely based on a Charlotte, North Carolina 2010 TED Talk by Randy Powell called Vortex-Based Math. A previously unknown mathematical language, one inherent to nature, called vortex-based math, is putting the language of God all together now. All matter is spun into creation in the form of a double torus shape with a black hole, or infinite density in the center, creating a feedback loop with the infinite energy field. When there is massive energy or information in a feedback loop within itself, there is a conscious energy field. Randy Powell calls this feedback loop the definition of consciousness. He explains that when scientists follow what these numbers are doing, they get doubling. A connection of all the science is doubling. The cells in our body multiply and double. The binary code of computers double. Musical scales are doubling. Nuclear reactions, squares, and square roots are all doubling. Doubling is motion at an angle, or what is called angular momentum. It's the whirlwind in the treadmill of creation. It spins the atoms in our bodies, the Earth on its axis, the movement of the solar system, entire galaxies, and the whole universe. What is it that causes this doubling, and what is it that is being transmitted and received? According to the current understanding of physics, forces are not transmitted directly between objects, but instead are described by intermediary entities called fields. The term unified field theory was coined by Albert Einstein, who attempted to unify the general theory of relativity with electromagnetism, hoping to recover an approximation for quantum theory. The so-called theory of everything proposed here is closely related to Einstein's unified field theory, but differs by not requiring the basis of nature to be fields, and also attempts to explain all physical constants of nature. A universal theory cannot be realized with our current understanding of physics. Researchers will first have to take a different, more esoteric approach. What is emerging now with vortex-based math is the true and verifiable grand unified field theory. The implications that emerge from an understanding of it are nothing short of revolutionary. With it, we can create inexhaustible free energy, end all diseases, produce unlimited food, travel anywhere in the universe, build the ultimate supercomputer, create artificial intelligence far beyond our own, and introduced absolutely awe-inspiring technology. How is it possible to make such outrageous claims? With vortex-based math, we have the secret that links all technologies together, and that secret is numbers. Mathematics is a living language, a jigsaw puzzle that, when pieced together, no longer creates a rendition or an approximation of reality. Numbers are reality, neither flat, nor arbitrary, nor imaginary, nor irrational. Mathematical points can define space and time literally. Nature likes to repeat itself, as above, so below. 6 numbers forming a hexagon, for example, can frequently be seen in nature on any scale. A snowflake, light polarizing, the pattern of beehives, and Saturn's North Pole are all hexagon shaped. These shapes form pathways for any matter in motion, which is never straight, but always at an angle. Nothing in the physical world ever moves in a straight line. Not a bullet shooting, not a lightning bolt, not a beam of light. Everything is a coil, even a phantom coming from a distant star, even a photon coming from a distant star, proving relativity exists. Our body has a DNA coil. Thus, we are a vortex machine which sucks materials in at the top and shoots them out at the bottom. This is the basic flying principle of disc-shaped crafts. They pulsate energy out, then draw it back in, and by doing so, a craft regulates its own temperature and gravity field. Everything is connected. All bits of energy in the universe and beyond are all connected. They just appear spread apart by the illusion called space. The God particle. The discovery of the Higgs boson particle, the so-called God particle, is, in theory, a tiny, never before seen subatomic particle. The standard model, SM, of physics in the subatomic world allows for other particles to have mass. Finding evidence of the Higgs boson for the first time was somewhat like finding the Holy Grail for physicists. Its existence represents the elimination of all other basic elements in the fabric of the universe. More specifically, the Higgs boson is a hypothetical massive elementary particle predicted to exist by the standard model of particle physics. Its existence is postulated to resolve inconsistencies in theoretical physics. Many scientists do not like the nickname God particle because they think it overstates the particle's importance in the grand scheme of things. We have electricity, and at the center of electricity is magnetism, and at the center of magnetism is a flux. A flux field is a higher dimensional energy known by many names, such as dark energy, tachyons, monopoles, gravitons, or etheron energy. It is the energy that keeps us conscious and alive. It is not static or stationary energy. It is a pulse or a surge, a beating heart of all existence. Thus, the God particle is the ultimate fundamental particle in the universe. This energy is the source of all time, motion, and vibration. It is the only thing that comes from the whole or the zero. An example would be the center of a cyclone. It emanates linearly in all directions, penetrating everything without any resistance. It cannot be shielded. As the cyclone penetrates, it leaves a grain. It shows how things move, stick together, or come apart. It animates everything. It is the source of non-decaying spin of the electron. Combine it with a coil, and what appears is a perfect mathematical vortex consisting of a positive electromagnetic energy radiating out and a negative backdraft counterspace, essentially the same as gravity, which allows for contraction. This perfect mathematical vortex can be read as timeless geometric codes out of which emerges all life forms we know, including the strands of our DNA, the cornea of our eye, snowflakes, pine cones, flower petals, diamond crystals, the branching of trees, a nautilus shell, the star we spin around, the galaxy we spiral within, and the air we breathe. Etheron energy, one name for the flux field of higher dimensional energy, is literally the glue holding the universe together. Einstein called it an inertia ether. The Big Bang Theory was just one of the reactions giving birth to the expanding universe, which appears only to be expanding because we are on the southern half. The northern half is contracting. As space expands, time contracts. A black hole turns into a white hole, compression to decompression, and etheron forms the shape of a donut or a torus, which is what everything becomes at its maximum acceleration. The DNA is a torus. Blood cells are a torus. Also magnetic fields and galaxies. Nature appears to rely on this one core reoccurring pattern to evolve life at every scale. It is an energy vortex where everything, everywhere, from atoms to galaxies and beyond, share this common characteristic. This is why a tornado is much more powerful than an atomic bomb. It is a one-way living system machine. Thus, a tornado is a self-sustaining jet. Using a mathematical hologram, the torus can be scaled up and down to infinity. By any other name, it is possible to create a localized space-time implosion. Think of it as a controlled desktop black hole. This is the final technology. It is the philosopher's stone. It becomes a reactionless drive because it is unaffected by any wave that it carries. It is the true model of an atom, and with it comes the key to the periodic table. For the first time, we can cross over from one science to another unbroken. Whether the subject is subatomic physics, the periodic table, computer science, or DNA, this torus does it all. It is also a surgical tool, a spaceship, a supercomputer, and even a high-fidelity speaker, all in one. We now have the potential to cure all diseases, create artificial intelligence far in excess of the human brain capacity, and all of these breakthroughs are a result of etheron flux fields. Here we have a blueprint for a perfectly efficient magnetic field generating coil. Reversing the torus. Einstein discovered that space and time are part of a single unified fabric. This leads to the conclusion that an atom is simply a displacement, also known as a vortex, that is, in space and time. Then all that's left is a flow within space-time, an aperture through which the flow may occur. Space-time starts out flat, without curvature, but as it accelerates towards the speed of light, the curvature increases. This curvature bends gravity along with it, though on the quantum level, it is far too small to be appreciated as part of the same basic force. So we would refer to it as the weak force. At the speed of light, a torus is created. Space could now be thought of as the outside surface of the torus, and time as the inside. Ultimately, to understand this in terms of physics, we have to see all atoms and molecules as almost like portals. That is, as having a great source of energy flowing into and through them. All matter is constantly taking in this energy to replenish itself each and every moment. And if the flow were cut off, the object would disintegrate. This suggests that the universe is alive and its infinite energy can be tapped by aligning harmoniously with nature. What happens when you accelerate the curvature past the speed of light? The torus unrolls again, but now it is inside out. Time, which was on the inside of the torus, has now moved to the outside of the torus on the surface. What was once time has now become space. This suggests that everything inverts. As velocity of an object further increases or decreases, the torus again flattens out, becoming a stable, inhabitable plane. This is the gateway into time-space, a parallel reality in which there are 3 dimensions of time and 1 dimension of space. On the other side, the 3 dimensions of time become the space we move through and experience as space. And the 1 dimension of space becomes the steady flow of time. The torus is life. The torus is the form of the flow of energy throughout the universe. The universe inherently grows a torus in every dynamic system. It can scale up or down to any size. Scientist and philosopher Arthur Young explained that a torus is the only energy pattern or dynamic that can sustain itself. The torus is made out of the same substance as its surroundings, similar to a tornado, a smoke ring in the air, or a whirlpool in water. The essence of torus dynamics contain 2 toruses called tori, like the male and female aspects of the whole. As one half is spiraling toward the North Pole, its opposite is spinning towards the South Pole. This is also referred to as the Coriolis effect. Examples are the weather on the Earth and the plasma flow of the sun. The torus also defines the shape of the Earth's magnetic field. It has a truly universal ubiquity. At the human level, every person is not only an energy torus, but each one of us is surrounded by our own toroidal electromagnetic field. To understand this, consider that our bodies are a continuous surface, that being our skin, with a hole through the middle, that being our intestinal tract. Each individual's torus is distinct, but at the same time, it is open and connected to every other living organism in a continuous sea of infinite energy. It is the same energy field that we can feel with a magnet. It is unusually invisible, but by scattering iron fillings loosely around a magnet, we can actually observe the toroidal shape of energy. The torus in a human is the energy field around the heart when it is coherent with the frequencies of love, consistent with a violet aura, which is a golden ratio algorithm of the 3-to-4 rhythm of the heart. In other words, the aura torus field around the body is centered in the heart, the strongest electromagnetic field in the body. Universal pattern of energy flow. Torus formations, also known as donut on a stick, have been studied in plasma labs for decades, in part by generating tremendous electric discharges. A high energy electric discharge will generate magnetic forces many times stronger than gravity. In the lab, scientists can pull plasma into thread-like channels and spin it. The researchers use the electron beam ion trap, EBIT, to reconstruct processes in the laboratory as they occur in the matter around black holes. Instabilities compress the plasma into hot, spinning balls and generate ring currents around them, forming in the shape of the torus. Once again, as above, so below, proves completely true in the laboratory with the reoccurring shape of the torus. The world, according to quantum scientists, is a holographic universal illusion, as every speck or wave is present everywhere and in everything, but maddeningly elusive, because energetically we are all light. The substance of the universe is consciousness, although this is not the typical terminology of quantum scientists, because it is not something one can easily get a hold of in a laboratory setting. If we look through the lens of the torus as the fundamental and universal pattern of energy flow, the in and out waves could just be the enfolding and unfolding aspects, the inhale and exhale that maintain the toroidal wholeness. Another further vital concept is to imagine that at the same time as waves spiral infinitely out from a point of singularity, its complementary wave spirals infinitely in, just like the dark spirals between the light bands of the galaxy. If a device could access the boundless power of that inward pressure wave, there would never again be an energy crisis. It could then be accessed anywhere in the universe, and suddenly fuel-less propulsion becomes a possibility. Such a drive would be creating its own gravitational field. So theoretically, it could do maneuvers independent of the Earth's field. And by aiming its pressure differential, it could be pulled through space-time like a helium balloon rising in the air, only much faster. In space, there is no gravity. The terms gravitation and gravity are mostly interchangeable in everyday use, but in scientific usage, a distinction can be made. Gravitation is a general term describing the attractive influence that all objects with mass exert on each other, while gravity specifically refers to a force that is supposed in some theories, for example, Newton's theory, to be the cause of this attraction. By contrast, general relativity gravitation is due to space-time curvatures that cause inertial moving objects to accelerate towards each other. Isaac Newton's theory of universal gravitation is a physical law describing the gravitational attraction between bodies with mass. It is a part of classical mechanics and was first formulated in Newton's work, Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, published in 1687. In modern language, it postulates that every point mass attracts every other point mass by a force pointing along the line intersecting both points. The force is proportional to the product of the two masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the point masses. F is the magnitude of the gravitational force between the two point masses. G is the gravitational constant. M1 is the mass of the first point mass. M2 is the mass of the second point mass. R is the distance between the two point masses. Einstein made famous his equation E equals mc squared. E is energy, m is mass, c is the speed of light. Einstein declared that physical matter was nothing more than a concentrated field of force. What we term a physical substance is, in reality, an intangible concentration of waveforms. Different concentrations of structural patterns of waves unite to form the myriad of chemicals and elements which, in turn, react with one another to form physical substances. Different waveforms of matter appear to us to be solid because we are constituted of similar waveforms which resonate within a clearly defined range of frequencies that control the physical processes of our limited world. Einstein maintained that m, the value for mass in the equation, could eventually be removed and a value substituted would express the physical in the form of pure energy. In other words, by substituting a value standing for pure energy for m, a unified equation should result which would express, in mathematical terms, the whole existence, including everything, of the universe. Matter and antimatter are formed by the same wave motions in space. The waves travel through space in a spiraling motion and alternately pass through positive and negative stages. Matter is formed through the positive stage or pulse, and antimatter through the negative pulse. Each spiral of 360 degrees forms a single pulse. The circular motion of an electron around the nucleus of an atom is therefore an illusion. The relative motion of the nucleus and electrons through space gives the illusion of circular motion. The period during the formation of antimatter is completely undetectable, since obviously all physical matter is manifesting at the same pulse rate, including any instruments or detectors used to probe atomic structures. The period or frequency rate between each pulse of physical matter creates the measurement that we call time, as well as the speed of light at the particular position in space that we are aware of at any given moment. If the frequency rate of positive and negative pulses is either increased or decreased, then time and the speed of light vary in direct proportion. This concept explains time as a geometric construct, as Einstein theorized it would be. Light has correctly been described as being both a wave motion and a pulse. The theories of Max Planck would also correspond. Planck reasoned that a pulse of light is manifested when the energy level of an atomic structure is altered by outside influences. In this construct, there would be a twin stream of consciousness on the antimatter side of the cycle, and this would create a mirror image of our own individual personality. The frequency of manifestation of both streams of consciousness would position our awareness of the illusion of reality at a particular point in space and time. Now we are in a position to travel from one point of space to another without being aware that we have traversed distance in the physical sense. This is the ultimate method used for intergalactic space travel. Einstein knew that infinite non-constructive compression was the key to solving the unified field theory. Einstein didn't know about fractal geometry, and he didn't realize that the golden mean ratio solves constructive electrical interference. It is the reason modern physics does not claim to know the cause of gravity or light. If you want to make a wheel, you need a circle. If you want to create life with DNA, you need the golden ratio. Nature abhors a vacuum. Occultists over 100 years ago spoke of the ether, which is the material that fills the region of the universe above the terrestrial sphere. This notion challenged scientific beliefs for many decades. Occult chemists were speaking of proto-ether called malaprakriti, or an initial false vacuum, undergoing an expansionary phase change to become koilon, or what we call today the normal quantum vacuum, driven by a superforce. The occultists belabor the point that instead of matter being solid within an empty, insubstantial ether, the ether itself is very dense, and matter is really just bubbles, or the absence of ether. What appears as empty space is actually a seething ferment of quantum activity, teeming with ghost or virtual particles in a frenzy of complex interactions. The existence of ether was widely accepted in scientific circles until the early 20th century, when the Michelson-Morley experiment of 1887 was co-opted to prove that no such hidden energy source exists. Similar to the way cold fusion was denounced and has re-emerged with the new name lattice-assisted nuclear reaction, just use the benign term quantum medium instead of the forbidden word ether, and the mainstream press might just cover the issue. Call it what you like. An unseen energy medium pulsates throughout the universe. The 19th century concepts underlying this occult cosmology are easily visualized in terms of liquid in a cylinder. Fizzing can be introduced if a piston is moved. Thus, the superforce can induce a quantum vacuum transition. Multiprakriti, or colon, releases energy, which can tear the ether into numerous subatomic particles or bubbles. These can be observed and appears as being substantial, even though they are, in fact, the absence of substance. Thus, one could say that matter was sucked into existence by gaps in the cosmic expansion. It is important to understand that at the quantum level of description, the vacuum is the dominant structure. Particles are only minor disturbances bubbling up over this background sea of activity. The simplest kind of massive particle is known as a meson, which is actually a bubble in the ether with its internal matter field lines trapped within the bubble. Non-spinning matter bubbles would tend to be spherical. They are called scalar mesons, and there are 36 different kinds of them in nature. The occult chemists Besant and Ledbetter identified both kinds, vector and scalar mesons, as their E3 state of matter in 1895. Thus, the dense ether, or the quantum vacuum, is scientific dogma today, even though it seemed the height of absurdity when the occultist Theosophilus first proposed the notion, proof that in time, esoteric theories can, and usually do, become accepted science. The new quantum sciences also tend to reject the Big Bang theory as a universal creation, whereas, like the torus, for every expansion, there must also be a contraction. There is also a tendency to move away from the theory that the universe is in decay. To prove that the universe is in decay, scientists would have to prove that protons decay, which they have not yet been able to do. The new quantum sciences also throw the free energy debate wide open.